happen, we have in hand.
So you agree with putting it to a vote in the first place?
How could I disagree with putting something to a vote? You know, but I think it can't be just another. I'm wary if it just turns into delay.
There's the risk of it wasting time.
Yeah, and and getting away from what the real big issues we have to consider, which is where are we going to build housing now? How are we going to tackle the transport crisis now? Because we have a crisis. I don't know if you noticed it. Traffic around the city with volumes growing 5%, 6% per annum. It's not. It's like the Richter scale. It's not like congestion will grow by 5% per annum. It'll reach jump points where it grows by 20%, and very quickly people are going to say, they're already saying it, you can't come to Dublin, it doesn't work as a city.
And what do you see as having a mayor how would that solve the problem of traffic?
Because I was involved for years. I was on the Dublin Transportation Authority. I was on the bus lane committee. I was on the cycle lane. I was the chair of the Dublin Cycle Campaign at the time. It was a good process. It brought people like myself in and others, and we had a good office. We had the Dublin Transportation Office, which really had a good strategic vision for the city. I spent years watching Dublin Bus fight with Dublin City Council, fight with the RPA, fight with the Dublin City Centre Business District, fight with the Dublin Chamber, fight with the department, It was amazing how, from my experience in looking at transport planning in the city and housing planning is related, how interagency rivalry, how rivalry between the councils actually stopped us doing what we had to do. And I think the advantage of a mayoral office is you have someone who actually says, sorry, stop that, work together, this is the strategic plan, here's where we're going, are you delivering? And that's needed. It's not it sounds abstract, right? But it's actually, it's one of the reasons why Dublin has such a housing and transport crisis.
It's not something that's performed at the minute by the managers.
No, because as I said, Dublin City might be fighting with Dún Laoghaire, and they're not accountable. It's not transparent in terms of the manager has all the powers, but I don't think it's appropriate that I think you have a stronger mandate when someone's elected with a clear strategic plan, a vision for the city's going. That gives them the authority to say to Dublin Bus, sorry, you're going to have to do it, or say to the RPA. Whereas currently the city manager isn't elected by anyone. He may have a vision, but what authority does he have to either enforce it on the other three councils, or the neighbouring county councils, or on the agencies who actually have to deliver it? So I think you get power with the mayoral office, and that's power to really take decisive action. At the moment, our system has loads of different people with authority, but no one with real power.
So power is important. What else do you think the office should be, and what, maybe more importantly, shouldn't it be?
One of the other things it should be, this is my own personal perspective, the various powers we're looking at, one of the powers is we're giving it a development, Dublin Region Development, and it's an enterprise and economic development strategy. I think one of the real opportunities, if you look at what does Dublin make and do, or what are our industries, one of the biggest industries is the tech industry. We also have a tourism industry, we also have a financial services industry, we have a lot of public administration, but those three, tech, finance and tourism, are probably the three big employers in terms of generating outside income. I think on each of them, on the tech side, I think it's pulling that industry together, it's representing it internationally, it's setting real ethical rules and guidelines around development of digital technology. For example, I'd love to have some sort of look at developing networks here, social networks which are city-based, which is our own networks, which is not just an international platform, but where we develop our own local community social networks. And it's based on really strong ethical guidelines around how you protect data, how you ensure privacy, how you reward creativity. Or getting that right for this city would do more than anything else, I think, to help the development of that technological industry, and also making sure that technology integrates with the rest of the city. We don't just have what's happened in San Francisco, where you have a tech industry that's kind of at war almost with the rest of the city, or the same in Berlin, where it kind of affects property prices to the extent that people actually resent the technology industry. Actually getting how a city like Dublin, and we are similar to San Francisco or Berlin or Lisbon or any of the kind of aspirant tech cities, London, how the tech city works within the wider city is one of the issues that I think a mayor should be really good at, and should, if you have a mayor that really understands that and gets that right, it materially affects our ability to create employment, to kind of, and also create an ethical technological industry here. Same in financial services. I mean, I met, there's a colleague of mine, Gerhard Schritt, he's a German Green Member of Parliament in the Bundestag. He came here around looking at what the IFSC was doing. And I do think there's a role for a mayor to actually have a slightly oversight and review of what a financial services centre is doing in terms of, are we happy that it's not just a tax haven, that it is actually an ethical financial services centre? And I think a mayor has the authority over an industry like that. Now, it's not authority over it, but it's an ability to develop it in a certain way by being an elected mayor. And then thirdly, I was also a member when I was a city councillor on Dublin Tourism, and that industry is important. All the music, food, pubs, cultural centres we have. Just coordinating that and having a vision for that, what sort of city Dublin is to visit, is again something that a mayor can actually have an effect on. So for me, I mean, the primary reason, the primary purpose, the primary roles is in the planning, transport, housing, because that's where we're in real crisis. But there's another which we provide for our availability, the economic side, the enterprise side, for a mayor as a head of that regional development authority to get the development of those industries right, because they are where most of our private sector employment is. And we need to get it right. And I don't have, who do you ring at the moment, or who do you talk to if you want to talk about Dublin being a tech city? Carla Millington, great, or Chris Horn, or there are people, TJ McIntyre, but there's no one in the political system or the administrative system that you'd go to if you wanted to talk to Dublin about Dublin being a tech city and how it develops.
So you're moving your bill forward tomorrow. How would you get the public interested in it?
Well, firstly, I think that's why public consultation isn't a bad thing, and we'd support that, which is Fianna Fáil's proposal. I think you got to translate it. People aren't interested in necessarily the minutiae of political office and how it works one with the other. They are interested around where we're going to get housing, how expensive it's going to be, what sort of local environment can we have. I mean, I think one of the other aspects in terms of planning and development, how are we going to develop Dublin Bay? How are we going to develop the Dublin Mountains? How are we going to develop our rivers, the Dollar, the Talca, the Liffey, in terms of as corridors? And I think if you come at it from those really specific planning issues, but planning in the bigger, wider sense, a lot of people are interested in that part of Dublin. A lot of people are like any Dubliner is interested in their city in terms of how it develops. So I think we don't necessarily talk all the time about whether the committee should have 30 people or 15 people, which is what the political differences are. Maybe talk more about, well, what could we really do with Dublin Mountains if we want to be really creative? How do we work with Coillte so that we develop the Dublin Mountains as a really special national park for the city? I think, and a mayoral office, our mayoral agenda being to deliver on that is one of the ways that you come at it. I think people aren't interested necessarily in the process of politics. I think they're interested in the outcome. And I think that's maybe how we get to the consultation, or we get people interested.
And finally, how would you address the kind of fears that people have at the minute that it's another layer of democracy, and kind of the current political climate where you have people like Donald Trump being elected? What happens if a celebrity candidate comes along?
Yeah, well, you have to trust the people. I do believe in democracy. One of the things I was saying when I was talking earlier on, the bill was initially introduced, we've amended it to update it and to take account of various different aspects. We've taken the issue of water out, because we originally said put the mayor in charge of how we develop water, but water is so controversial at the moment, and that's subject of political debate here that isn't settled, so we've taken that out. But one of the advantages of updating, as I said, what was a bill initially introduced in 2010, is at that time there was an acute financial crisis. We were not looking at big, expensive, elaborate bureaucratic systems. We had to do it in a way where it was kind of fitting in within the existing administrative budget system. So there's no additional cost involved for the public in this. It's taking the existing allocation of resources for the local authorities. It is creating a new tier. It is creating that tier above the 4 existing local authorities. And I think that tier is needed here in the same way it was needed in London. In London, they had 32 regional or local authorities, but I still think in Dublin we have a real problem of 4 authorities that are competing with each other, not collaborating. And you need some mechanism to pull them together, and that's why you do need that level above. Most of the membership of the regional authority that we're creating is coming from the existing system. It's existing carhirlocks of each of the 4 local authorities, existing members allocated from those authorities. So it's not creating a huge new tier, it's mainly one new office. And the structure.
It would be a very powerful office.
It would be, yeah. It has to be. It is. And the very fact of being mandated, to being elected, gives you the real power. That's a strength. But I think that's needed. And I think the example of London, which is probably our closest example in terms of cities, I mean, London's much bigger, it's a global city, but we are too. I think anyone looking at what's happened in London, whether you're from the right or the left, whether you kind of support Ken Livingstone or Boris Johnson, you couldn't get more different, or Mr. Khan, the latest mayor, I think anyone looking outwardly and assessing London's progress in the last 20 years under that centralised system of having a mayor with real authority over similar areas, planning, transport, housing, would recognise that it has worked for London. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't work for Dublin too. So I think there's a real gap in the current system. The gap is filled by officials in the Department of the Environment and Custom House Key and officials in City Hall and in the other 3 local authorities. That gap system isn't working. I mean, it's patently has not delivered. We see, having to pay such high rent, having such a housing shortage, having such poor public transport. That's what the current system has delivered. We do need to change the system, and I think it does require political change. If you talk to the Dublin Chamber of Commerce, they agree with that. If you talk to the academics in looking at specialising, particularly in housing and transport, they all recognise the same. So I'm hopeful in public consultation in the next 6 months that becomes clear. But more than anything else, I hope, as I said, we use the process to start answering the critical questions around where do we put people, where do we build high quality housing, how do we stop gridlock happening, how do we make Dublin a really effective tech city, how do we make it a nice place to live as well as to visit. And we're not bad, we're starting with a good space in terms of, for all the difficulties we have in housing and transport and other issues, we're still a very international, since I've grown up in the city, we've changed. We're a much more multicultural, multinational, international, exciting city. It is a great city, but it ain't served by its political administrative system at the moment. That's what needs to change.
Okay. Thanks.